Hello! Hi everybody and welcome to our bi-weekly Devstream. My name is Matt, this is HP, and that's Mark, and we're here to talk to you about stuff going on in Foxhole. Should we move this closer or...
Can you guys hear us just fine?
Or not? Anyway, what's up? How's everybody doing? I was told to ask about the Super Bowl.
Yes, and that's the response that you got.
But I don't think anybody watched it. Anyway, how was everybody's weekend? Did you guys have a good weekend? We've been really, really busy here over at the Clapfoot, and we're working really, really hard on World Conquest right now, and you guys have seen some of that, I'm sure, if you're messing around on the dev branch, which you can find the instructions for on our Discord. And we got lots of stuff coming up.
Yeah,
but very busy.
Yeah, we can't wait to get the first version out the door. It's been, by far, I think it's been like 7 weeks since our last update, and I think before that, our longest update cycle was 3 weeks, possibly 4 once at some point. But still, I think for the most part, like we've never really gone this long, just twice as long as we've normally gone, and it's starting to feel a bit weird, like just having held on to this update for so long. I think for better or worse, it needs to get out the door so then we can work on the next update.
So the expectations are also different and things like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's also like, there's this strange, the reason why we don't like to wait so long for updates usually is because the longer you wait, the more sort of like you go off on these like tangents without testing things in a real world environment.
Yes.
Which for a like big multiplayer game like Foxhole, where there's like it relies so much on the real world testing, it's not good. But for World Conquest, it was necessary because there's just so many moving parts. There's no way it could be done in 3 weeks, 4 weeks. In fact, we actually started working on a lot of this stuff even before 0.8, right? So even last year, a lot of this stuff, we didn't just start this year, we actually started like last year, all the way since like the earliest parts, like last fall, and just, you know, slowly we've gotten to where we are right now. But to get that final push, to get the first sort of like minimal playable version, right, took the 6-7 weeks. And we've just been working full steam ahead and getting that first version out. And I think we're going to be able to play it finally, you know, hopefully later this week.
Hopefully.
Talk more about that later. So that's definitely been the only thing we've been thinking about. It's also been funny because it's kind of like fragmented the team slightly, because some people who typically work at the beginning of the pipeline, usually by this point in the cycle, we already have them sort of like knee deep in working on some new things, but because the rest of the team has that work in like the middle and like the end of the pipeline, have been spending so much time extra on getting World Conquest out. People at the beginning of the pipeline have had more time to actually experiment with a couple of things, which has been cool. And I think you know, it's sort of neat to see like, hey, when we're not constantly putting the pressure to like get the new thing out the door,
we actually take the time to develop it as
what kind of like things can they work on, and they've been doing cool stuff like the trenches, the trench concept that we showed in the blog, and some of the concept art. So that's been kind of cool, just sort of like seeing the front part of the pipeline over in the corner of the room, like just kind of chipping away at this stuff, and seeing what they can do when they have like more time. And I think there's more there than just what we've shown. So I think it's,
I'm excited to show off all that stuff eventually, but who knows exactly when that's going to be. Like, don't expect like trenches in the game like this update and stuff like that. Like, it's
of course
it's gonna come later.
Cool. So you wanna
get into it?
Some cool stuff from the community.
Yes. We have community highlights this week, which we did not have last week, so
keep an eye open. Yeah, so community highlights. We can spin up. Last week we had 2 weeks ago, sorry, we didn't have community highlights because we were so busy. This time we were still busy, but at least I was able to take a look at the community submissions, and I picked up those two in particular because I don't know why one of the names is not showing up. It's by Turtle and Rabbit. Somehow it got deleted.
Oh, there you go. It's just in the transition.
And it's I thought it was really cool that the one that Turtle Rabbit did, the gunboat, would be the Warden version, and you can see that this was done in 3D.
Right.
Like this is.
Is it like a SketchUp?
Looks like
It looks like SketchUp, like the little guy there and everything. And I think it captured very well the spirit of our.
I mean, it looks like it's more powerful than the Colonial because there's
for some reason
extra turret on there, and
there are 4 guns in this one for some reason. I don't know why.
I like the mailbox slid.
Mailbox edition.
They didn't miss that.
Where's the 4th gun?
You can see in the back there on the left corner.
That's 3.
Oh no, there's another one at the back.
Yeah,
you can see it's very.
There's a cannon, a small cannon on the bottom, and
Very
there's a heavy machine gun.
Yeah, okay.
Tiny,
I see.
So, obviously from a Warden player.
Yeah, either that or it's a Colonial player that thinks that the Warden needs the handicap.
Right.
And
I mean, it is cool because the water stuff is something that we've kind of put to the side for like the meantime to focus on other things. But I do think that like in the future we do want to do a lot more exploration there with like larger ships and stuff like that, right? So I think this is really cool.
Well, it's funny kind of the way the development goes as well. Like originally the water stuff was supposed to be like, okay, we're gonna have like APCs. And then it just we started embracing it over time a little bit more and more. So I think there's a lot we could do there.
Yeah, no, that's what I like about our game and our community is that they can pick up what we're doing and like the possible avenues that we are looking into and like explore that. And I think that's really cool for us. And the other one that we saw that is this one, the one on the right side by Passionate. I wanted to include it because I thought it was a really cool illustration. It's a Warden soldier with a gas mask, but I like the way it was done. Like the hatching, it looks pretty neat, and it was just a cool picture. I just wanted to showcase a cool picture. That's pretty much what it is. There's no hidden meaning on it. It would be cool. One of the things that I did like about this one, that I think would be really cool, is that I saw that this Warden soldier had HE grenades on his belt, and that would be something potentially interesting to put in the game.
Like, to actually visually show
what you have in your
third slot.
If you have like a grenade belt, or
I think it'll even be cool eventually to show what's in their secondary slot.
Yeah, like if you have a pistol on your or something like that.
So you can actually see if some guy is holding like HE grenades, you can make like a strategic decision on how to handle that, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Right, like some guy running with like a green ash grenade, that matters, right?
Exactly.
Especially with like the binoculars, spotting someone with something will be really important. So
absolutely,
that'll be really cool.
No, that would be really neat to have.
I mean, I think you could have all the weapons like appear on the character, almost in something like in the Division, like the characters have like their gun is like strapped to their backpack.
Yeah.
So you can always sort of see like their pistol. Everything is all. I'm like gesturing because you can see me. Everything is like visual, so that in like multiplayer you actually know what people have equipped, and I think that does, like you were saying, have a huge impact.
I think the only problem is the size that our characters are on the screen. Yeah, well, they might not read too well, but anyway, that's a different problem. It would be neat. And the last thing that I wanted to showcase from the community highlights, one more arrow, by Patchouli. It was this really neat
analysis
of our tech tree. Like it's a guide, so you can take it if you like it, like with a grain of salt of if it is the optimal or not version of it. But it was a very nice analysis of like how long it should take for you to complete the tech 3, how long, like what are optimal paths, and why you should take them if you think like him, if you agree with his dispositions on how to play the game. But it was just like a very, very well done. This is just like two of the pictures of that are part of his big analysis. So go check it out in the community highlights number 36, if I'm not mistaken. That is gonna be posted later today or tomorrow. And then you can read the whole thing. You can also, if you haven't seen the tech tree yet, because you haven't looked into the dev streams, the dev branch of the game.
It's a good way to.
It's a good way to have an idea of what is coming to you guys soon.
Yeah, I think one cool thing about the guide was that when we like designed the tech tree, we had we obviously had like a theory
of how much
on
time,
like how long things should take and how we thought the progression was going to happen over the span of like days, right? And the funny thing is that the guide written here was extremely close to the theories that we had, right? So it was almost like a sanity check, even though ultimately no one's gonna know until it goes out into the real world and we see how many players are participating in scrapping, so on and so forth. It was a really good in terms of like, okay, this is what we think, this is our theory, and then now this is like, oh, okay, this kind of echoes our theory. So it was a good as like a sanity check, which was really neat, I thought. And then we'll find out soon how close the real version is, and then we'll come back and be like, hey, maybe our theories were wrong, or maybe the theories were right, and then we'll see how it goes, right?
I think it's cool because also it's a snapshot of this moment of like the first implementation of the tech tree and how people were thinking about it. So when we revisit the tech tree and when things evolve, because they will eventually evolve with tech tree, I think there's very, very, very low chance that the tech tree will ever stay like this.
Oh, I think it's 100% chance it's going to change.
We're going to add more stuff and we're going to change the way the tech tree probably branches out. This is a cool example of what has happened at that moment, and we can analyze that.
Absolutely. And we always we've said this a couple of times, but the tech tree that we have right now is definitely built for stability, and to make sure that Conquest has a good chance of actually working,
stick the landing.
being able to land on its 2 feet for the first couple of trials, right? And it's definitely I've seen a lot of suggestions on how it can be changed, and I think a lot of those are great. We're actually thinking about a lot of the same things you guys are thinking of, but for us, we have there's all these different goals like stability, and then the player agency, and then what can we do that's interesting, and we have to kind of just do a balance of all these things, right? So anyways, I thought this was really cool.
Yeah, we also don't want to shock you. It's so hard. Exactly. We already are doing that. Cool. So check out the community highlights when it comes online soon. Crazy Flying Chicken will be posting it sometime in the future, probably tonight, if not tomorrow. So
sometime this week.
Definitely sometime this week. There's some pretty neat stuff there.
Let's move on. Development update.
So what's going on?
Yes, what we're working on, basically what we're working on, and so there's not too much new stuff because we just working on World Conquest, but there's some small little stuff that is new that you guys don't know about yet, because we were saying, we have sort of a backlog of things that we wanted to do, and now that some of the people on the team that at the beginning of the pipeline had some free time, we're able to knock off a couple of these things that aren't high priority or anything, but they're just we have some time in the pipeline, let's go ahead and do it. And one of them is the Warden truck, right, which we've actually been holding on to for I think months now, right? So we finally took that concept and we're let's go ahead and make it, and just want to share that with you guys today. Because our goal is to bring as many of the vehicles in the game up to the point where they have faction specific versions, and the Warden truck is sort of one that we're able to knock off right now. So it's still work in progress. It's not a final model that you're seeing there. So we're still tweaking things, but I think this is gonna be cool because now you have this notion of like if you're out in the wild and you see a truck, you can immediately know which faction it's from, or you can like commandeer a truck from the other faction and
use
that. But one thing, there's one thing that's stopping that from being really cool, and that's like right now you can totally see like the names of players, right? So that's something we might take a look at too, is like even for friendly players, if they're inside a vehicle, maybe we do have to limit the range at which you can see their names to something more reasonable. We know it has to be functional, so you can see like if your squad mate is like in a vehicle or something. But maybe if you're at a reasonable like distance away, maybe we shouldn't show the names, because it'll be really cool if you can sort of like steal a truck from the other faction
and suppress attack,
drive right into like the enemy base, right, with like satchel charges or something, and then plant a bunch of satchel charges at their base. Things like that I think would be really cool, and having faction specific vehicles kind of opens the door to that sort of thing, right? Not all the mechanics are working to support that, but at least the door's open for us to like make that work in the future, and I think that'd be kind of cool, right? So there's a couple of vehicles that we don't have faction specific versions yet, like the motorcycle. Some like the CV maybe will never have faction specific because it's more of like a utility, like a general utility type of vehicle, and maybe that's where we draw the line, but you never know, right? So
I mean, and there's other things. This is not anything we've talked about, but there's other things like instead of a motorcycle for like the other faction, it could be a different kind of vehicle. Like
that doesn't assumes the same position of the motorcycle, but
I think there's some cool stuff there. But I personally like seeing more faction specific in the world. I feel like stuff in the world, I feel like it makes things feel more rich and full and alive, instead of seeing the same thing everywhere.
It would be really nice if your AI responded differently to the kind of vehicle that you're driving. So if you're in a warden zone and you drive a warden truck, the AI doesn't shoot you until it's very close.
The fact of having a faction, the enemy faction vehicle, is like an asset. It's not just a visual thing.
Exactly. Yeah. So you can actually sneak into the enemy. That would be really sweet.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. There's a lot of cool things.
There's a lot of possibilities there, actually. Not thinking about it, but anyways, for now, warden truck design. So cool.
For now, nothing is happening other than the design.
Yeah. Next thing is World Conquest test event. So this is exciting. We're finally close enough to, we're confident enough and close enough to actually releasing the next update. Which will be pretty much some changes across the whole game, like small changes, but the bulk of what's in there is World Conquest. And the way that we're going to roll this out is we're not going to roll it out and be like, hey, World Conquest is available, everyone can now play it. Rather, we're going to be doing a test event, and that's how World Conquest is going to be played for the very first time, right? So just to talk about how the rollout is going to happen, and before like any of this, I want to say this is like a tentative plan, and we're going to keep you guys updated, and anything could change. It could be pushed back easily, right? There's a lot of moving parts. I want to be super clear on this, that like this is not a commitment to any kind of date. It's sharing information with you guys on what we think is most likely going to happen, right? And what we're shooting for. So we're shooting for, first of all, that on Thursday, that's 2 days from now, to drop the 0.9 update. So everyone will be able to update their client, and then we'll bring all the servers back up, and everything will be running just as they are now, with a bunch of changes from 0.9. And then on the same day, either the same day or Friday, we'll keep you guys updated. We're going to be starting a test event for World Conquest. So this is going to be us saying, let's let's try out the war, first war in World Conquest.
Yes.
And the goal is to gather real world data on the gameplay of World Conquest as it is now on this first version, right? Because everything right up till this point has just been, like I said earlier, has just been like a theoretical sort of more like the theory level. We think it's gonna work a certain way, but now we have to like put it to test and see what happens when there's hundreds of players all playing, right? So definitely want to treat it like an experiment because not only is it the first version and a lot of things could go wrong, it's both on the gameplay side and on like the technical side, right? There's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of new tech that we're putting into the game. It's sort of like behind the scenes. It's much more complex than what you're used to, and a lot of stuff we're putting in there, you guys might not even be seeing sort of the fruits of that, because a lot of it is put in place so that we can enable more features in the future. So there's a lot of stuff that are changing behind the scenes, and like what you're just saying, Matt, you might not even be seeing all the changes. There's a lot of moving parts, and then it's also going to be the number of people who can participate is going to be limited. So we'll see how many people show up for the test. If it gets past a certain amount, then we're going to have to shut off access to more people because this is the first test. We don't want, it's not really like a stress test to like throw tons of people at it yet.
It's not server stress test.
Yeah, it's not ready for that yet, right? We want to make sure just the fundamentals of the technical side and the gameplay side, we want to put that through its paces. So we might not be able to accommodate everyone. We'll see. Maybe we will, right?
Yep.
Maybe we won't. So sort of, if you don't make it in, just like don't be too upset. There'll be another test probably like just around the corner.
Also, if this is a test event, but it's an event that's gonna take some time to conclude because it's a world. So if you don't get to enter right away as soon as the update hits, the whole point of having the one world in the end is to have these long battles that you can jump in and advance,
leave
and come back
like a day later.
So that is part of the test as well.
And another thing I want to say about how we're going to be running this is when we first launch the test event, we're going to be monitoring the situation very closely, and if there are problems, we may shut it down shortly after and then spin it back up so we can fix any issues. But if things are stable, then we'll keep on running it throughout the night, and then we'll keep running till the next day. We'll continue to monitor it, and again, if there's problems, we're going to shut it down. If it's if things are stable, then maybe we'll even let it run through the weekend, right?
Yeah.
So we're sort of have to take it step by step, and hope it holds together, right?
Worst case scenario, we have to shut it down a couple of times to fix things, but we are hoping that everything does go well. We are preparing for things going well as well, and possibly leaving it open for the weekend. And
this test won't be the whole. It won't be the whole world. It's just going to be 6 regions in the meantime. And once we get past this test, and once we're able to spend more time on fleshing out the rest of the world, then hopefully we'll have a larger test to follow in the near future, right? And another thing I want to stress is that this is not the one world revamp that we've been talking about. This is testing one component of what's going to be in the one world revamp. So if you're coming here kind of expecting like, oh, it's finally here, like this
everything is
this huge update that we've been expecting for so long. No, this is just a very limited, specific event to test like one part of this whole thing that is coming, and I want you guys to see it that way, right? So
I think it's important to note too, like the maps are not like explicitly designed for this yet. Like only one of them has been. and that's part of the experiment. Like, there's a lot there. Like, so it's not like you're gonna see all new regions, all new stuff. Like, suddenly everything's different. It's not gonna be that way.
And like, and I think that to sort of like sum it up, if you want to get your hands dirty, you want to try out the first version, you want to be part of the test, right?
That would be great.
That's great. If you want a smooth experience and you want the one world experience, I suggest you wait. Just kind of like wait and see, and just you can continue playing in the campaign, or you can wait, right?
It will. By the way, it will be available. We're not gonna take away campaign for now or anything like that.
Yeah, exactly.
So
because the reason why, because we might shut this down pretty much at any point, right? I mean, we're hoping not to.
Yeah.
But it's a real possibility, right? So, and then
there's a 50-50 chance.
Yeah. 50-50 chance.
That's an inside joke.
Sorry.
And one of the good things though is that, so the last update cycle was really long, but I think the next one is going to be the complete opposite. I think it's going to be very short. Because once we run this first test for World Conquest, we're going to be following up with fixes on the technical side, fixes on the gameplay side. Maybe we'll add in some new features, we'll tweak things, we'll balance things, and I think what you'll see over the next month or two is these like faster like iterations while we improve World Conquest. I think it'll feel a little bit more like the pre-alpha, where we're sort of like moving a bit faster, and then slowly the updates will get slower and slower again, and then we'll get back to our normal schedule at some point. So it's gonna be exciting. I think it's exciting.
I think it's gonna be.
But like, if something is totally busted, don't expect it to be like another like 6 weeks before that. That's not gonna happen.
And I think it's exciting because I think a lot of the game, has sort of like stayed fundamentally the same for like a really long time. Except I think the map intel thing changed a lot, but still, there's a lot that we've been waiting for these changes for so long. So I'm excited. I'm excited to.
I would say that the map intel was the first step on all these changes.
Yeah. Yep. And then we'll keep you guys updated. So just stay on Discord, stay on Reddit, and stay on all our channels, and we'll
bug KFC if you need to.
Yeah. Send all your questions to him. He'll answer everything. Sorry, KFC. Cool. I guess that's all there is.
Are you ready for Q&A?
Yeah.
All right, so we got Q&A. So ask your questions. I'm sure you guys have a lot of them. So there was a question that just came by earlier that Sir asked. What's going to happen to the current servers when the update goes out?
So we're going to keep a subset of the current servers up. We're going to look at the historical activity of each one, and just sort of the couple of servers that have been like more active. We're going to keep them around. We want to, in the short run, preserve the infrastructure that is there right now until we know World Conquest is stable. So all the community servers that usually go up on the weekend are still going to go up. We're going to continue to support the FCL, and nothing there is going to change, at least for this first update. And then depending on how the test goes, we'll see how things go. But this was very much like intentional, and it was actually, we had to do extra work
to make sure that everything
that everything else can still continue. So we, to have two versions of the game that are supported in the same game is actually not easy, and caused a lot of pain, but I think it'll be worth it because we want to be able to try things out without ruining the experience for everyone for a long period of time in case it doesn't work out, right?
Yeah.
So,
Google asks a really hard question that I need you to be really prepared for, okay? Why is there no mailbox on the boarding truck?
See,
it's inside the tarp.
So that's like a Julian question, and I wanted him to be on the stream, but he just recovered from being sick, and he's kind of like preoccupied. So maybe when we can drag him onto the stream one day, he can answer that question, and I'm sure that he'll be happy to answer that.
Sure. Blazing Wind Fairy asks, are trenches going to be buildable? No, they are not.
Yep.
Like, as always, I think my answer to this question is going to be like, I really want to do that, but currently the technology is not simple to do in the way that I think we would want it to be done. So one of the things about the trenches, just to give a little bit of backstory, is like, this is something I've wanted to do since day one in the game. Like, I've wanted trenches in the game in some way in day one, and we've been trying to figure out ways to do it. I think if any of you guys played the combat prototype and like snuck outside of the boundaries of the map, which people did, there was actually an area that was full of like prototype trenches, and I was just not happy with them. Anthony and I have discussed a way to do it, and that's what you see in that screenshot, and we haven't put it to a real test yet, so I'm not going to guarantee anything, but it's definitely like looking a lot more like there will be trenches in the game. But they will be static, they'll be part of a level design, they'll be part of a map, if that helps answer your question. What's the team limit going to be for each region of the test? Bionic 2000 asks.
Yeah, so the way we're approaching it is that there's not going to be like some sort of a hard limit on each side. The way we're approaching it is that there's a certain amount of people that can fit, that we think can fit in the whole world, right? Without there being too many like specific regions being completely filled. Because our goal is to make it so that the chances of you being in a queue when you're traveling is as low as it could be, right?
Yeah.
So from that standpoint, we think roughly for the first test, probably around 300 players is going to be like roughly where the capacity will be reached for this test. Because again, our point is not to like stress test the numbers. Our point is to like test everything else, right? So I think 300 will probably be a safe bet, roughly.
Cool. Pico UK asks, could you explain the warden-occupied toilet?
The warden-occupied toilet.
So this is another one. You know, sometimes when the art team is a little more like free, we put stuff in the game. Like, I'm sure you guys have seen the wheelbarrows that are now in the game. The warden-occupied toilet, I think it was a joke. I think it was AT Golden or Lightning. I can't remember who did it. There was like an image that someone made of a garrisoned outhouse, and I thought it was really funny, so we put it together. We tried to sneak it in, but then like day one somebody found it. So
there's no way you can sneak anything.
You can't.
It's
no.
gonna be found.
So it's also not warden occupied. Either side can build it. It just works like a garrison. So that's that.
How come there's two flags on it?
Because there's two flags on the garrison houses. So we just don't have the way to. Anyway, this is a good question. Craig Strivers asks, are you concerned about spreading the community too thin over all the maps?
No. Well, like, no. I don't think it's too much of a. I don't think it's too much of a concern right now, especially because I guess there's talking about this first test, and then there's talking about like what's gonna happen kind of like afterwards, right? And I think for this first test, we'll see what happens, right? In terms of how many players will show up, because I think there's a lot of players that are waiting for World Conquest, so it's possible we may have the opposite problem of that, which is that there's too many people that are trying to play. In terms of like there being too little, I think there's different ways we can work around that in the short run. We can always like have less regions as one way to do it, and then work our way up to larger regions. I think it's an important thing. It's an important question though, because I think one thing that we want to make clear is that we're very much like in like an experimental phase that we've been talking about kind of like over and over again. And our goal right now is not to get like tons and tons of players. In fact, I actually think if we had tons and tons of players right now, it would be very bad. It would be completely bad because we wouldn't be able to like change things. as easily, as fast. We wouldn't be able to just go on and talk to everyone that's playing the game and being like, hey, look, like,
what do you think?
You know, like, what do you think? And get the quality feedback. It would just be like this huge sea of like noise, right? Mm-hmm. And I think right now it's kind of good because we're very close to a community, and this is exactly what we want, because we can make World Conquest while having like a feedback loop that is tight, and we won't have to worry about changing the game so much for so many people. I think changing the game for like a few thousand people is different from like changing the game for like tens of thousands of people, because at that point, like, you know, you don't have a lot of room to move, right? Like if you had a game with like 100,000 people playing the game constantly and you change something, like I can guarantee you that the vocal minority there is going to be like tens of thousands of people, and then like you can't change anything, right? It's actually bad. You can't change anything, and I actually think it's good right now that we have a small group that we can test World Conquest with, so we have a lot of room to make it good, and then once it's good, then we'll worry about trying to get more players in. So I think we'll just have to balance the number of regions, and you know, so whether it's too few people or too many people, we'll have to play around with how many regions are like available, and we have other solutions too in case there's too many people. So we'll keep our eye on that and we'll see what happens.
There's a question I was going to ask you and I forgot while in the time that you were talking about it. When we originally did World Conquest back in the day, back before it was on like the game was in alpha and pre-alpha.
Yeah.
We actually had a smaller player base, and it never really seemed to be too much of a problem then.
Yeah,
from what I remember.
yeah.
And
well,
that was across a slightly smaller. It was like 4 regions.
We had
but
far less than what we have now, and we were still able to fill the conquest. So, I'm actually
doesn't seem to be like too much of a.
Yeah.
I'm actually more worried about the opposite.
Having too many
people for the first test, which we actually don't want. Like we want.
We don't want to discourage you from playing. Don't get me wrong.
I mean, that's the hard thing. Like, you can't choose where the numbers is going to land, right? It's either going to be too little or it's going to be too much. So we're just going to have to make a guess, which we're guessing maybe like 200 people might show up for this test.
Maybe 500 show up. We don't know.
Maybe 200-300, hopefully. And if that happens, that'll be the perfect scenario for us, right? If there's a lot more than that, then we'll manage, but we'll have to shut some people out. Right.
And that is exactly what happened on pre-alpha is exactly the reason why we're doing it this way, because we didn't have a problem with a number of people. The problem at that point in the game, more than a year ago, I guess, was that World Conquest was not ready, and we might have jumped the gun a little bit at that moment. And now we're making sure that like World Conquest is solid, that the gameplay is there, and that's why we want to do it this way.
So like. That's exactly it, because the original World Conquest was normal Foxhole with 4 regions stuck together, right? So like there was no consideration for the larger game. There was no consideration for making the wars longer. There was no consideration for like how to balance the game for like multiple regions, and all the effort that we've been putting in, from the port bases to the blueprint system, to
refinery system.
Yeah, basically to the changes to the layout of the maps.
The wind conditions as well.
The wind condition.
Yeah.
These are all there because we had that much earlier test, and we were like, man, we messed up on a lot of things. A lot of stuff was just broken.
Yeah.
And we want to make sure that we don't this is a good shot at making sure that we avoid the pitfalls of that first run, and that there's so much stuff. Like there's like the cross region maps. There's like the early warning system to help with the town flippings. There's a lot. It's definitely not perfect. We said some problems, but I think it's going to be very different. In my opinion, it's going to be very different from the original World Conquest. I think it's going to be night and day.
Now, conversely, though, if we had not done that first test, this would have been a lot harder. Like
most likely,
the fact that we did that, we would have just ran into those problems now if we didn't do that.
I think it was extremely useful, absolutely for us. Yeah.
So I'm gonna move on to another question. There's one in particular. I can't remember who it was. You Emperor. I'm gonna kind of summarize it because there's a whole bunch of different points. Sure. When are quality of life changes happening?
Right. So. You want to answer
that? I mean, my simple answer to that would be like they will come just like eventually. Like
can I say gradually?
Gradually, yeah. Like they're not going to happen all at once, and they're not going to happen like now. They're going to happen over time, and and part of the reason is like we are still figuring out a lot of like technical things, especially in regards to One World, in regards to like other gameplay things. Quality of life is usually like a later in development thing that's added, polish and touch and feel and stuff. Of course, we add it sort of like as we go.
and I have to say in 0.9, there are some updates. Like the UI is a lot more polished. You don't see, like, it's much easier to see the UI on top of the world. The notification system is totally revamped so that you don't just lose your squad invites if you didn't press J at the right time. So there's already quality of life improvements, and I think that we try to sneak those in along the way, but I think that much later in the process, once there's not as much of the gameplay stuff changing,
to figure out
or to change, it's not that ground is not shifting constantly, and we're going to go into some sort of like a 1.0 version. I think we're going to very aggressively focus on the quality of life improvements then, and we're going to continue to make it better. I always think it's going to be an exciting time in the far future when we're like, you know what, we're going to focus on quality of life for a few updates, and we're just totally going to like, you know, make all this crappy stuff much better. But the way our philosophy is, the quality of life, there's no point in working on quality of life if
the base game is not.
If the base game, there's more work to be done there, right? It's just, it's like the wrong order of operations, right? Like, make the core game good, and then make the thing on top of the core game good after that, right? So
absolutely.
Yeah. And of course, there are exceptions to that rule because sometimes we do like add things like character customization, just a little bit, like, you know, profiles, just a little bit. Like that, you can argue that stuff's like not necessary, but it's a nice to have. And we still will do that stuff when the time is right, but the majority of it, like Mark said.
And just as we always said, like different parts of the team works on different features in different times. So that means that sometimes, like, the reason why we have a little bit different UI is because I had some extra time and I did some small UI improvements. It's definitely not perfect or anything like that, but that happens. If sometimes people really submit quality of life problems as bugs, and we log all the bugs and we try to fix, of course, the ones that are game breaking first, and then they go down list. So there are people that are always fixing bugs, and some of those bugs are technically just quality of life things that sometimes if the guy has time and see a bug, oh, I can squash this one very quickly, I can do this little change that's going to make life better for a portion of the population, we will also do that. So that's why it's hard to give like a hard definitive answer, like which update is going to come, which is going to come naturally, I believe.
There's another small tweak in this update is that we moved all the UI hints into like a hover.
Oh yeah.
Into like a tooltip, so that you don't always have these giant hints on the screen of things that you already learned, right? Which is really bad. Like you see those hints once and you know forever how
they have to click
how to drop a stack as an example, but now you're stuck looking at that forever. But that's now in a tooltip.
Yeah.
So free up more of the screen, right?
Yeah.
So we sneak things in.
Exactly. It's going to come gradually, and then it's going to be, there's going to be more of it. The last question I'm going to take today, which goes back to something that I said earlier. I'm going to again summarize. Blind 2000 again. Another question asks, the maps seem imbalanced.
Map team?
The maps seem imbalanced.
Is this for World Conquest or?
So I think so. So, like I said, the maps have not been fully redesigned for World Conquest yet. Only one of them has. So just expect that to be changed over time. Don't worry too much about the balance early on. We'll do our best to balance it like as we go, but the balance is going to change. So
also, we never expected all the maps to be absolutely equivalent one side to another.
Yeah.
Just like sometimes you are in a situation in which you have to deal with adverse odds.
Well, there's like symmetry, and then there is balance, and we definitely are not symmetrical, and that's never been a goal.
Full region balance is going to be important, but like just expect it to change. Like what you see now will not be what you see later, like for sure, 100%. So don't worry about it too much. And if you still have problems, obviously, throw it into suggestions and feedback.
Make some noise.
Exactly, because we will look at it,
but not too much noise.
And just bug Crazy Flying Chicken. It's fine. All right, guys, we're gonna call it a stream today and get back to work.
I just have two things to say.
Yes.
The first one is that we have an art contest going on.
Right.
So I'm gonna put the link up here, and I hope that Crazy Flying Chicken posts the link for the art contest there, or Matt. And there's a written portion, and there is an image portion, so a visual and written, two different areas. There are some small prizes if you want, but we want to see your submissions. There's some pretty cool stuff coming. Keep them coming. They're awesome. And the second thing is that if you're watching this on YouTube, catch up with this stream on Tuesdays at 2 p.m. Eastern time. And then you can watch live and ask questions.
And then finally, there is the community stream,
which Crazy Flying Chicken will post a link to.
Yeah, so it's a stream that is run by the community. That happens on the Thursdays opposite of the weeks that we do these streams. So next Thursday, the community stream will be happening. So make sure you tune into that.
Yeah,
and that's it.
Yes, I think that is. Cool. I said my piece.
I think that's it. Thanks, guys. We're going to get back to work. We look forward to sharing this stuff with you guys, and let us know what you think through all the normal channels.
And I hope to see you guys on the battlefield when the update comes.
In World Conquest.
Yes.
All right, see you guys.
See ya.